Hello, I'm going to talk to you now about packaging for your adventure game. I'm going to show you some examples of good packaging and some examples of not so good packaging and some examples of awesome packaging. So let's talk about what the package has to look like shape-wise. It's going to go in this lucite, translucent plastic bag. Why this bag? Because this bag is big enough to hold a floppy disk, right? Because that's the whole magic here, is that we're going to take your game and we're going to export it out onto an Apple II 5¼ inch floppy disk, and we're going to actually play this thing on the real hardware. So that's the payoff at the end here. We get to take your game, we get to throw it on a floppy and actually run it on some real vintage hardware and listen to the drives spin away. So that's really cool. So what we want is something that's going to fit in a bag like that. Now that shape, that bag happens to be exactly, if you just took a piece of paper and folded it in half, that is about the perfect size for one of those bags. So when you're setting up your template, if you set it up by 8.5 by 11 in GIMP or Photoshop, then you will have something that's the right size if you fold it in half. So let's take a look at some of the packaging that I've got here. So here's a pack. If I can open the thing. There we go. Package. There we go. There we go. So here's a adventure game package I made at a computer conference, and it is single-sided. So if you open this thing up, you'll see there's nothing. There's nothing on the inside. That's okay. There's a map here on the front. Now the map is just decoration, and that's because the floppy disk is designed to cover that part up and you don't see it. So at the top I've got a nice composite image with the title, a subtitle, and kind of an intro to the game that would make people want to play it. And on the back I have a more in-depth description of the game along with a list of features, and you can see I've slanted the text and kind of deformed it there, and I've got my name on it. I've composited several images there together to make that. And what I did at the conference was I made lots of copies of the game. I put them in the baggies and I just taped them to my door, and then anybody who wanted an adventure game could just go by and just take one off the door and go play it. So that's an example, I would say, of some okay, that's like some A- packaging right there. So that's pretty good. So it shows that there's some skill in using the paint tools, that it's that there's different layers, there's a lot of different elements there, and it's also good marketing, right? You walk by, you're like, that looks funny. All right, we'll play that. Or what is this thing? What does this thing got going on? Okay, look, it tells me on the back there's like a feature list, and I can see that by the feature list that this guy is that there's a sense of humor here. All right, so that's one I did. Let's take another look at another one that I misplaced. And all right, let's take a here. Not one of mine. This is a really, really good one. This is A+ work. Michael Packard recently made a game for the Apple II, a new game, and you can see here it's got a nice colorful label. And if I take out the insert, you can see it's nice printed on heavy cardstock. Look at that. So it's got a screenshot of the game, nice and colorful. It has different fonts, has info about him. And then look at the inside of this. This is awesome. It's got like a whole owner's manual on how to play the thing, the different commands, the different modes, the different skill levels, and it's on both sides of the page. So that is exceptionally nice work by Mr. Packard. And let's take a look at another one by a friend of mine. This was actually a real adventure game back in the 1980s. Look at that hand-drawn artwork. That is just super, super cool. And so that was not Photoshop. That's all like hand-drawn there. And then inside there's a manual on how to play it. Ooh, look, hand-drawn maps. Isn't that cool? So maybe if you're like doing like a fantasy thing, maybe you want some sort of Lord of the Rings style fantasy map that shows kind of the general gist of the landscape, but maybe not the specific details, because the fun of these games is mapping out all the space. And then there's like, more copyright info and how to get help. Oh, that's another good thing, right? So a lot of these times, these games would be sold with an extra hint book. And maybe one thing you want to do is on the inside of your packaging, have the list out the puzzles that are in there along with the solutions to those puzzles. Now, you probably don't want to just put the answers in there. What you want to do is maybe write them backwards or use a decoder, like have a little, shift every letter 13 places, and then at the bottom have the little decoder table, so you can sit there if you want to solve the puzzle. You have to figure out what, that A is an M and a B is an N, and then something like that. So maybe there's a hint guide in there, but the player has to decode it. So those are all things. You want something that if somebody were buying this on a shelf, if they were walking into a mom and pop computer store back in 1985 or something, or a university computer lab, and they saw it, they're like, oh, that looks cool. That looks better than the cassette tape in the baggie with the business card stapled to the top. Okay, so that's examples of some good packaging, and exceptionally good packaging. Now let's take a look at some absolutely masterful professional grade packaging. So this is from a game called Deadline. This is a classic Infocom game. It was a detective game, and look, it even came in this like portfolio, this dossier that was like sealed shut, and it's all like top secret-y. So this is like the case file. Let's take a look at some of the cool stuff that came in here. All right, okay, so we've got like official memos that just kind of set the tone for the story, give you clues on what you're going to have to do. They're all dated and signed, and it just looks really cool. There's pictures of the crime scene. There's like inspectors notes, information about the case that all looks like it, that builds up this feeling that like here's the real evidence from the real crime that you're going to have to solve. Here's the inspector's casebook, and what this does, this is kind of like the instruction manual for the game, and it tells you, kind of how to interact with the NPCs, what kind of commands that they would be able to understand, so you can talk to them, because in the detective novel you have to talk to the NPCs, right? So here's again more pages on just the different commands that the game understands and when you might want to use them. So in this game, right, there's, you can tell your assistant to go analyze something. Now, the analyze is not a command that, you would expect a text adventure to understand. And that's another thing you can put into the packaging, or the kind of the guide, is if there's any commands that the user is going to need to know how to use, and they need to know that up front, that would be a good place to tell them and kind of give them a user's manual. We have more police report stuff here. And we've got maps. Oh, fingerprints. Look at this. Fingerprints, fake fingerprints. More crime scene evidence that you're supposed to read. And that's what that's doing, is it's giving you more information on the backstory for the game. Look, lab report. And what's the lab report for? The lab report is for, oh, look, the actual evidence. These were the pills that were found next to the dead body. Now, they have turned all discolored and gross with time, because they're probably about 40 years old at this point, or 35 years old, or something like that. But I suspect these were just Smarties. You can go to the store and buy them. They have that Smarties shape. I am not going to eat those and find out if those are in fact Smarties. And then, of course, there's an actual guide. Another manual here. See, examine search. It tells you, this is kind of how to get up and running, how to get the game up and running on your particular computer, because you could buy these games for lots of different computers. Oh, and then finally, that was the one I was looking for earlier. So now let's see how lame mine looks by comparison. That was another one of my one-off single-sided adventures. And you can see I'm reusing some of the same devices that I used on the first one, but I've got a screenshot. I've got kind of a picture that sets okay, this is a space adventure. I've got something funny on the back, and then I've got that blank area that the disc is covering up when it's in the baggie. So that's what we're going for. Now, you don't have to have the full-blown Infocom thing with all the evidence in the case inspector's file, but anything, hints, walkthroughs, special commands, any backstory information that's not built into the game that the player might want to know. That's all super cool stuff. And then let's just take a quick look at, some sort of mediocre art here. This is kind of like, it's like a picture thrown on a piece of paper. There's not a lot of work went into that, so that would not be super impressive. Also, if it's an exact clone of the template that I give you and it looks exactly like mine, that's not A work right there. I'm looking for originality, and I don't know. Don't be afraid to take a risk, or don't be, if it doesn't work out on the first try and you're like, oh, this package looks terrible. Okay, fine. Start over again. Make a different package. That's what focus groups are for. Which package do you find the most appealing, right? Ask your parents, ask a friend, right? So there it is. That's what we're going for package-wise. We want a piece of paper, preferably with printing on both sides, with all sorts of cool info about your game that's going to make it pop. We're going to take the best games. We'll actually put them in the physical packages on the floppy disk. We're going to tape them to that board way over there. And then hopefully, if we're ever allowed back in the classroom, we will fire up the original machines and enjoy the games on the original hardware as they were meant to be played. So I hope that somewhat explains or demystifies what I'm expecting out of the packaging. If you have any questions, just email me, get in touch with me somehow. With whatever COVID-19 permits, and I'll be happy to answer your questions.